Hey everyone, Splen here. I'm going to do a quick blow-by-blow of my most recent world record at Yadar Valley, the one that's doing a lot of rounds on Twitter right now. So what we're going to talk about is basically how this lap was possible, if you're just curious, or maybe one day you want to try it yourself, or just interested in the mechanics of Star Citizen racing and flight in general. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is the ship choice and, why I'm starting so far back. So first of all, this is a Kruger P-72 Archimedes. Specifically, this happens to be a P-72 Archimedes Emerald, which is the special limited edition skin that came with the Constellation Phoenix Emerald. It doesn't make a difference. They have the same stats. It's just a slightly different tint on the outside. I've stripped off all the weapons that I can in the Arena Commander ship loadout editor. I've also taken off one cooler and both of the shields. You only really need one power plant and one cooler for any ship to run in general in racing. So that's what I've done. The weights across all components in 3.21 are evenly distributed. Doesn't really matter which components you use, as long as you have one cooler, one power plant, that's it. Okay. So that out of the way, I'm flying decoupled the entire time. I use space brake when I'm not racing to stop the ship. I don't use space brake at all during this race. In fact, to get the most bang for your buck, you're going to be doing manual braking. So pretty much you're in control of everything, at this level of play. So the only control I have bound on my left stick, other than, what you see at the bottom of the screen, which is the strafes, this is a boost button. I have the boost button on my left trigger. Everything else is pretty much just nothing. I do a little bit of dead zoning in atmospheric flight with my left and right strafe just to make sure I don't accidentally touch it while I'm trying to go straight. But other than that, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's nothing special, nothing with the curves, anyone can do this. You certainly don't have to use two joysticks. But we're going to talk about the real important part about this, which is the mechanics itself in game. So, why am I starting so far back? You can see that obviously I'm quite a bit away from the start-finish line. The start-finish line is in fact a little bit above my crosshair there in the middle of the screen. And I'm going about 500 meters per second now, but I get up to almost 800 meters per second and try to keep it there as best I can going through the start-finish. Now, the reason I do this is this run-up, you want to have a lot of speed. And in this particular race, we're going to do that because we want to save as much boost fuel as possible. We still want to be fast, obviously. So that straight between the start-finish line and turn number 1 is significant. It's significant enough that you want to make sure you're maximizing your speed, however you can. Now, some people can boost before the start-finish line early enough that their boost is recharged by the time they go through it, or at least by the time they get through turn 1, and that's fine too. I just prefer to take a nice high diving approach in order to limit my atmospheric resistance and use a little bit of gravity to help me keep the speed up. So let's go ahead and watch it up to that point. Here we go. You can see I'm still managing the TVI pretty well, and what I mean by that is I'm keeping that little butterfly in the middle of the screen. That's this guy here underneath the crosshair right now. You want to keep that as close to the crosshair as possible at all times. And that limits your drag and keeps you as aerodynamic as possible on the trajectory of your intended path. So here we go. You can see my speed has gone up to about 750, and by the time I get through the gate, it's slowed down a little bit. We're like at 740 or something now, and that's because the atmosphere is getting thicker down here. And I'm also starting to pull up. You can see that TVI start to drift off center, and that's natural because I'm trying to change vector. The most efficient way to change vector in this sort of track and atmosphere is to oversteer, which I do everywhere. So let's keep it going here. So we're going through the first part, and we're getting up to turn 1. Now, we're going to stop it right here. It's actually a perfect time to stop the video. I'm just now triggering checkpoint 1. The checkpoint bubbles are a little bigger than intended, and that's just the way the game is right now. But you can see that I've already started an oversteer. Now, a couple significant things to understand here is, one, it's not a perfect 90-degree turn, and there's a very good reason for that. And two, this is going in blind. You're not really able to see what you're oversteering for. So I'm going to preface this with, this is probably the most difficult and technical turn in the entire track. And thankfully you get it out of the way on turn 1, so you could practice it fairly easily. This turn is called Drifter's Hideout. And what we're doing here is a gigantic sort of 180 hairpin, and then heading toward gate number 3. We have 2 gates we're going through here. There's one here, one coming up just around this bend, and then a third one that goes through a little rock, slit in the rock wall, I guess, on the other side of this after you complete the full 180. So what I'm doing here, and why I'm not doing a full 90, is because at the end of this turn, and really through the middle of this turn, once I feel like the ship is starting to stall, I'm going to start tricording in order to maximize my vector. In fact, you could see, if you look at the bottom left of the screen where my controls are, you could see that I'm fully deflecting to the left right now, so left strafe. I'm starting to put on the brakes, so that's why you can see between forward and back that blue dot is starting to go to back. And I'm not really touching too much of the up and down strafe yet, but that up strafe is about to get jacked. I'm fully deflecting to left yaw here, so I'm really, really whipping the ship. I'm fully deflecting left yaw and pitch up. I'm really, really whipping the ship pretty much as hard as I possibly can in this turn here. This is why I call this the balls turn, you know, when I'm streaming, because like you got to have a lot of balls and you got to know exactly what you're doing to do this. Don't do it in a race. Time trials are fine, but you know, as I said a lot of times during the stream, you have about a 50-50 chance to make this even at my level. So, you know, this is a very hard, very technical turn, but when we're talking about how tight these world records are, this is what you got to do. So basically I'm deflecting as hard as I can. I'm pitching up, and you notice how I mentioned earlier you can stall. Well, that's true. So, and we're only talking about this in terms of pitch up turns. So if you pitch up turn into a ship like this, it's a really light ship, not a lot of mass, tons of wing area, so you get a lot of lift into a turn. You could pull like 40 Gs and up, you know, going full speed into a pitch up turn in atmosphere. So that's a combination of aerodynamic forces and using your entire ship as an aerofoil to, you know, basically push upward in the direction of lift and help pull up into turns and make them more efficient. Obviously, you're going to build up a lot of G-forces, but a lot of things people don't think about is that doesn't last forever. As soon as once you start doing that, you immediately start slowing down. And once you slow down enough, you're no longer generating any lift from your wings, or at least not enough to matter, and you start to stall. And what that means is you are not getting enough G-forces out of the aerodynamic turn here to really make a difference anymore. You're just slow. So when that stall starts to happen, you want to start thrusting as much as you can. And that's why I turned it into a trichord about, you know, halfway through. You have to kind of feel it. You know, it's difficult, and it's going to change a lot depending on how thick the atmosphere is, how low you are, what kind of ship you're flying, what your speed is. So this is a kind of a sixth sense you get after years, maybe a long time. You know, you just have to kind of learn the ship, learn what's happening, and you start to feel that stall, and then you can use that to your advantage, you know, keep the speed as high as possible. We're basically leveraging the air and aerodynamic forces as much as we can until it's not enough, and then we start thrusting. Why? Well, we save a lot of boost fuel that way, right? If we could, and it's a tighter turn than just thrusters alone. So we're doing two things really. We're making the most efficient turn possible by not having to boost throughout, you know, I'm not doing a trichord boost through the whole time. I'm pitching up, and I'm using the air to my advantage to cut this turn as tight as possible. So that's a lot of technical explanation for something that lasts about 3 seconds, but let's watch it through here, and let's get at least to the next checkpoint and see what happens. You're going to watch me rotate. You're going to watch these thrusters go to a trichord. You're going to watch me get lined up for the second most insane thing in this entire race. Here we go. All right, so I have drifted. I was in kind of a full trichord, but I've laid off a little bit because I want to let this drift a little bit farther to open up a tiny window here where I can get through. Obviously, you can see I've built up a lot of G-forces, and that's something you just have to deal with. You know, this is where you're going to get your most extreme Gs in the whole race, probably, especially because you're getting a lot of side-to-side Gs due to the trichord. And also, I'm doing something weird here where if I turn side to side and go against the wind this way, I can drift a little bit farther. You could actually control how far you're drifting here with your roll. You know, obviously, if you put a kite against the wind, it's gonna get a lot of drag. But if you turn the kite sideways and cut into the wind, you're gonna be able to move a little farther. And that's exactly what I'm doing here is the latter. Sort of just cutting into the wind here, letting this drift go because I want to line up. You see where that 0 is in the middle of the screen? I want to line this up and get through a tiny hole that exists on the other side of this. Now, this line here, I think I'm the only one who takes it. You don't have to. You are going to save time with this line, but it might also cost you a little bit of boost. It's very, very technical. It's extremely difficult. Is it necessary to get these times? I'm not sure, but this is the line I like to take. It seems, in my mind, the most efficient way to do it. So you can go around the right side here, this is where a lot of racers will go, and that's fine. It's a pretty tight corner, but, that just means you have to make an extra hard turn once you get past this. If I go straight through this gap here that's about to show up, I don't have to cut as hard onto the next turn. So let's watch what happens here. Let's go a little bit farther. All right, so now you can see there's the gap. It's not big, but this is a small enough ship to get through it. My TVI is here right now. So now what I'm doing, my eyes are watching that TVI, and I'm trying to guide that TVI over to where it needs to go. And it's squirrely because speed is low. I'm only at like 100 meters per second because I'm at the peak of my drift. So that means this TVI is going to react very quickly. So I have to be very, very precise, very, very accurate. And I have about 75 hundredths of a second to do so. Here we go. There we go. So I've guided the TVI directly where it needs to be. I snapped it quickly. And this is like a 1 in 30 shot maybe of getting it that accurate. And this is part of the reason why this is a world record run. I've got it here many times. And like I said, it's about a 50-50 chance for me. But having it this efficient and having it basically lined up exactly on the vector I need to start my pitch up turn into this next turn is rare. It's very technical. You have a split second to get this TVI where you need it to be, and I was able to manage that here. So now that's out of the way, those two turns there, your turn into Drifter's Paradise, and this I'll call the exit from Drifter's Paradise. I'm sorry, the Drifter's Hideout, sorry. Drifter's Paradise is a different track. Drifter's Hideout. Now we are heading over into turns 3 and 4, which are very close together. Turn 3, checkpoint 3, is right here. That's between this rock wall. It's not too bad. You got to watch this geometry over here if you're coming in from the right side. I don't have to do that because I'm taking my ridiculous shortcut here. And then we're going to make an immediate right turn into another checkpoint. So here it goes. Gorgeous. There's my pitch up. As you can see, I'm lined up really well to get into this next checkpoint because of where I was able to land the TVI before. I'm starting my oversteer, and this is a massive, not quite a hairpin. It's more like a 90 to 100 degree turn. But I'm going to oversteer really hard, and it's going to send me into a massive stall. And there's not too much I could do about that here in order to make this the most efficient turn. Really, you want to minimize that stall as much as you can, which I do here pretty well, and get back on your TVI. So I'm just laying on the boost here for a little bit, and I'm going to try to let go of the boost as quickly as I can to save up for a more complicated turn later on. So here we go. We're going to pull up into this turn. I'm going to end into a tricord in order to get out of the stall once again. And I'm going to get that TVI on my straightaway for the next 2 or 3 checkpoints. Here we go. Tricord. You can see maximize vectors down here, right? All of these are maxed, or at least very, very close. And that's all you have to, that's your telltale sign I'm doing a tricord, right? If these are all deflected to max, that's a tricord. Taking a lot of G's here. You can see I'm trying to pull the TVI, which is somewhere over here. There it is. It's right there. I'm trying to pull that back up to be straight on, whip my nose up with the oversteer, and then rapidly pitch the nose back down to meet the TVI exactly where it needs to be. And the more quickly and accurate you do that, the more time you save. It's never going to be perfect, but the better you are, the faster you are. Going through, managing that TVI through that straightaway, doing a quick, snappy oversteer here to get lined up for the next turn. We're thinking really far ahead here. Snappy down pitch back to the TVI, rotating for one of the most complicated and important turns in this entire race. This is called fresh air. I talk about this a lot during my time trials because basically this makes or breaks your whole run. You got to make sure you get this tight, and it's very difficult to learn. Essentially, what you're balancing here is braking with your acceleration into the next straight. So this is a pure hairpin. You are going basically just a 180 turn here, and you need to flip and burn as quickly as possible without A, hitting the inside of this turn, and B, going too wide and making your run no longer competitive. So really, you want your nose touching the inside of this turn, which is going to be about here, as close as you can, while still maintaining enough velocity to transfer that momentum into your new straightaway. So I try to say, I tried to end my boosting back there early to have enough boost here, and this is a pretty good amount of boost. I mean, I've seen in Fresh's run, he had quite a bit more, and he used that later on. I do things a little bit differently, and we'll talk about that. But so I'm going to do here is a big oversteer into a tricord and try to line up my TVI perfectly for the next turn after the hairpin. But this is going to happen fast, and it's not easy to do at all. It took me a lot of practicing just this turn. I'm talking hundreds of times to get it to where it is now. So here we go. So gradual sort of oversteering glide into, now I'm just going backwards at this point. I'm going to now push that tricord to, and you can see it happening here, there's the tricord. I'm going to be pushing that with boost to get that TVI from behind my ship back in front, and I'm letting the existing momentum of the ship drift me just enough past this corner, and the tighter you are, the better it's going to be. And then get lined up for the next checkpoint. So here we go. There it is, meeting the TVI. That's quick. You know, that's hard to do. It was very rare for me to get one that quick. You know, and get the TVI back to the crosshair and get it that accurately. Because once you get it to this point, once you get that TVI back to the crosshair, this is when you're maximizing the amount of speed you're able to get per second. This is maximizing your acceleration of the ship, minimizing the drag, and being as aerodynamic as possible. So now I'm getting back into my normal hand position where I am trying to get a little bit of movement, you know, a little bit of thrust up, a little bit of thrust to the right here to keep that TVI level while I straighten out for the next 3 checkpoints. So these next 3 checkpoints are just a big old straightaway after fresh air leading up to stairway, and stairway goes to heaven. And this it's a tough turn with a new strat I had to learn just this day. And we'll talk about that when we get here. But basically, your idea here is try to stay as high as you can if possible, because the higher you are on these checkpoints, the lower aerodynamic drag you're going to have. It's not always possible, and it's not a huge difference, but it does make a difference. And then get ready for a quick turn up the stairway. So you want to just basically go as fast as you possibly can here. This is the biggest straightaway on the track, and you need to take advantage of it. Here we go. We're going to go for boostless. So what I just said there is I'm going for boostless. We're talking about the strat after heaven, which is up there. There's a checkpoint up there in a couple turns. What we're doing there, typically I would turn the whole ship over and pitch up into a turn going down. For the sake of speed, I've been nose downing this turn, which is something that Fresh and Boltok have used for a little bit. I've been reluctant to do so, but because we're using the new P72, which I had just learned this day, and by the way, that the P72 got a buff in 3.21 that made it basically just have faster top speed and atmosphere. So that means it doesn't really suffer as much from not having to roll, and this downturn is fine here. You're not going to turn as fast into a downturn, but by not having to roll the ship entirely on its, entirely 180 and then 180 again, you're reducing drag. So that's why we're going to nose down to that turn. And when I say boostless, this is where it gets bad. So in Fresh's run, he saves boost specifically for that spot to be able to accurately place the TVI on that nose down turn. I'm not using boost, so that's why it's called boostless, and that is really, really difficult. You have to deflect your stick, pitch down maybe 75%, and be able to pull up hard at just the right time to line up that TVI, because when you're not using boost in a serious aerodynamic turn in the P72 or P52, you're going to drift like crazy, and you can stall really easily. So to time that just perfectly, to just have enough speed to not stall, to just have the TVI where it is where you're not losing enough speed, this is like a 1 in 50 shot here, I would say. This took me a bazillion tries to get good at. Depending on how I had to use my boost to survive earlier in the track, I would either choose at this point whether or not I was doing boostless or not. And as you could see, I have no boost at all. So obviously, when I just had to glance at that and realize that I had to do this upcoming turn boostless, because I want to allow this to recharge as long as possible. That means not interrupting the boost recharge by not using boost until later on in the slalom, in order to maximize my speed there and get ready for the last couple hairpins of this track. So here we go. We're going to go up to heaven now, and you're going to watch me do the boostless down turn into the slalom. Here we go. And I have to. So there it is. So that moment there is so incredibly difficult and so precise. I mean, I'm deflecting very, very specific amounts during that turn in order to make it just perfect. You want to be quick, you want to be snappy, but if you push just a quarter of a second too long, maybe even a tenth of a second too long, and don't pull up at just the right moment, your TVI is going to end up down there. Your TVI can end up over here. It can end up too high. It is extremely precise. It is a tiny window. I managed to nail it pretty well here. It could have even been a little bit better if I had landed a little bit higher, but this is just fine. At this point, I'm going to be rolling a little bit into the slalom sort of dolphin turn is what we call this, where I'm going to be pitching up and then pitching down again and basically just staying on one side until the final leg of this slalom, which is a really hard 90 turn into the next checkpoint. So I'm going to be rolling. No tricording here. I'm just pitching up using aerodynamic forces because I managed to, with this very precise placement, keep my speed as high as possible. So now I can leverage aerodynamic forces in my turn without having to use too many thrusters. So here we go.
Beautiful. Let's go.
Yeah, keeping the speed above 400 here was incredible. Okay, so now with this big 90 turn, I am deliberately turning the ship at like a 45-degree angle so I can get into a nice trichord here. And you can see I'm well in the middle of it right now. And that is to just, angle this turn as fast as possible. And this is a big difference in my run here between myself and Fresh. Fresh drifted pretty far, and that's just a difference of boost management and how he wanted to approach this. But I like to take it really tight. Because I can do trichords really well. I'm, more of a zero-G racer, so I'm just very, very used to it and how I have to place the ship, where to find my projected trichord vector, which is something I talk about in my Principles of Racing series. It's somewhere around here on the P72. So I know that if I have my projected trichord vector around here, that lines up pretty nice with where this next turn is. So I'm thrusting all thrusters in that direction now across this axis, and that is going to get my ship, on that same vector. So again, just like in Fresh here, I'm just using the momentum of the ship to drift past this gate so I don't hit it, and I'm just trying to stay as tight as possible into the next couple of 90-degree turns. So here we go. Pitching up here, and you can see obviously there's a lot of G-forces I had to worry about here, so I couldn't pitch up as hard as I wanted to, and I couldn't thrust up as high as I wanted to. I had to stop the TVI a little earlier than I wanted to as well. You want this TVI in this turn to be a little closer to here after that turn, but because of how tight I take it compared to Fresh, I had to make some adjustments. So I'm basically just going to be kind of moving this TVI up a little bit here gradually just to not black myself out. And then I'm going to be pitching down and pitching up into the last slalom here to finish up. Here we go. That's it, and just laying on the boost. I had just enough boost essentially to get through there. I could have had a little more actually, but it's, obviously at this point of the race, you're just, grabbing for scraps depending on what you have left and how much you had to correct your earlier turns. So, that's it. We've crossed the finish line here. Those last few turns were all pitch up, pitch down turns just from raw momentum and trying to save up boost as much as I could. And that's it. And that gave us the 0.3 of a second we needed to get the world record here. I think a lot of the time save was on my line through Drifter's Hideout at the beginning. I definitely had a time save there, but that just left me, in dire straits later, which required me to do that in boostless downturn after Heaven. So that, whereas I can take that line like Fresh didn't through Drifter's Hideout, but that affected me that much later in the track, like 20 seconds later, when I had to decide what to do at Heaven. So, that's how much we're min-maxing here on this. A decision I make 5 seconds into the track is having detrimental effects on me 20 seconds into the track. Or I guess it's closer to 30 seconds into the track where I have to decide what to do at Heaven. And I had to take this boostless, and that was basically the crux of this. The crux of this whole run was that decision to take the downturn from Heaven boostless. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope I added some insight into how this works. Obviously, I'm very excited because this took 6 hours. But yeah, that's it. Enjoy. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or anybody over at XGR at discord.gg/XGR. And of course, you can catch me at splenshepherd.com or just twitch.tv/splenshepherd or youtube.com/@splenshepherd. See you guys later. Have a good one. We'll see you on the track.